So I want to welcome everyone. I'm Naomi Nano, and I'm with the Epilepsy Foundation of Hawaii. Thank you for joining us for this midday lunch hour talk story as we listen about the different epilepsy trials going on in Hawaii. I'd like to start off with our company's mission. And the mission of the Epilepsy Foundation of Hawaii is to lead the fight to overcome the challenges of living with epilepsy and to accelerate therapies to stop seizures, find cures, and save lives. We as an organization provide education like these types of talks that you're listening to today. We offer seizure first aid certification training, which we would love everyone in Hawaii to be seizure first aid trained. We offer advocacy, referrals, and all kinds of support for individuals, caregivers, families, and the community impacted by seizures. November is nationally recognized as National Epilepsy Awareness Month, or I'd like to call it Epilepsy Action Month, where we can all leverage our community strength to raise awareness of epilepsy, of seizures, seizure safety, and to reduce the fear and challenges that many people living with epilepsy may face. This is one of a number of different talks within our Hawaii Epilepsy Education Speaker Series. It is a spinoff of our education conference that usually takes place in November each year. But of course, due to COVID, we have gone virtual with our education talks, which has actually allowed us to safely reach a broader audience. So I'm pretty happy about that. Besides our speaker today, I'd like to also recognize our sponsors. NeuroPace, LivaNova, ASI, Greenwich Biosciences, Zogenix, SK Life Science, and Medtronic for supporting this Hawaii Epilepsy Awareness Month speaker series. Their support really assists us to get important and critical information and resources out to you, our community here in Hawaii and beyond. Today, we are very fortunate to have our wonderful, upbeat, and happy speaker, Catherine Mitchell. Catherine is the Senior Clinical Research Coordinator at Hawaii Pacific Neuroscience. So as I unshare my screen, Catherine, you can get yours up. And we really want to welcome you and thank you for, talking story with us in your lunch break. We really appreciate it.
Oh, of course. And thank you so much for the kind welcome, Naomi. I have had the pleasure of working with Naomi and her wonderful organization for about 5 years now. And it's always a pleasure to jump on. I know during the pandemic, we switched over to Zoom. So thank you for the folks who are here and spending your lunchtime with me. Previously, we had gone in person at the Vineyard location, but we adapt and we pivot. So I'm just pleased to share this information with you folks. Because we are a tighter group today, please feel free to raise your hand, to stop me, and to put in the chat. Thank you for those who have been muted and being very respectful, really appreciate it. But please feel free to stop me at any point. I do have a slide deck that I will share in a few moments, but if there's a word that you don't understand, if there's or if you say, oh, hey, that sounds really interesting. I like having a talk story discussion. That's usually the type of speaker that I am. So please don't be shy in raising your hand at the Zoom or putting it in chat, and Naomi will be helping me with the chat. All right, let's go ahead and get started. So I'll go ahead and share my screen. Dun, 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 dun. Okay. All right, so as Naomi said, we are Hawaii Pacific Neuroscience, a comprehensive epilepsy research unit, and we are located at St. Francis on Liliha Street. So I always tell our patients that, oh, you know Liliha Bakery, we're just a few blocks up from there. And who are we? So we have two epileptologists. We have Dr. Vimala Vajala, and who's on the left, and we have Dr. Corey Liao, who is on the right. And so these two folks, they are our neurologists who went through neurotraining, but who specialized in epilepsy. So their bread and butter is really epilepsy. This is their passion, their love, and they're the experts in Hawaii. And then for clinical research, a lot of folks ask me, Catherine, what is clinical research? So clinical research is the process by which new drugs, therapies, and vaccines are tested, approved, and made available to the healthcare providers and patients at large. So everything you see in your pharmacy and every medication that's prescribed is going to go through the clinical research process. This process is overseen by the US Food and Drug Administration, or the FDA. So as I had mentioned, all the drugs that we use and all the physicians we prescribed are approved through this process. We've actually had a few medications come through our clinic. Dr. Liao worked on Keppra, or levetiracetam. He's also worked on Xcopri, which is the newest cenobamate medication that was approved for focal onset epilepsy, as well as Nasolam. So we worked on that as well. The Engage Therapeutics, I'll actually be talking about it in a little bit, but it looks like this device. So that's later on in the presentation. But for clinical research, we've been in Hawaii for about 5 years now. And the reason why Dr. Liao wanted to bring clinical research from the mainland is because he saw a lot of his patients were flying over to California. They were going over to Stanford, Los Angeles, San Diego to get treatment. So when Dr. Liao came in, he said, you know, I have experience in clinical research. Dr. Liao was trained at the NIH, or National Institute of Health. So his training was with clinical research, and he thought to himself, you know, I can do this. A lot of people in the beginning told him that he could not, that Hawaii was too far from the mainland, all of the things that needed to happen, it was too hard, there wasn't enough training. But Dr. Liao really trained the local staff here, me included, and we were able to bring clinical research to Hawaii specifically for epilepsy. And I'm very grateful for his tenacity and for him persevering, because now we're able to bring treatment options to our epilepsy community here in Hawaii. We do service the whole state because we know epilepsy is not only confined to Oahu, and I can talk more about that later. So what are we looking for? Why do we do this? What makes us stay up at night? Well, first and foremost, we want to know, does the drug we're testing, does it work? That means, do you have less seizures? Is your memory stable? Has there been an improvement in your quality of life? So typically when we have our clinical research visits, we always ask them, in this last week, how many seizures have you had? And then we always ask, do you feel that your quality of life has improved? Do you feel that you're able to go outside without fear? Things like that. And then the second thing we're looking for is the drug safe? Were there side effects? If they were, how severe were they? Do the benefits outweigh the risks? Because the products that we're testing are still in clinical trials, we don't know all of the side effects, and that's what we're researching. But what I can assure you is that our doctors are very quick. We have a research cell phone that I keep right next to me, just to make sure that if any patient calls and says, you know, Catherine, I have a rash, it wasn't here yesterday, then I can say, okay, please come into the office tomorrow and doctor will see. So we're very quick and adaptable for that, because that's one of the main things we're looking for, is how safe is the medication. And then I wanted to go through the 2 pillars for clinical research. The first pillar is patient safety and rights. With clinical research, we have what's called an informed consent, and all of our participants are volunteers, which is very important. I always tell our patients that, you know, just because you sign the informed consent doesn't mean it's binding. You're always able to stop at any point of the trial. And then during the informed consenting process, myself or the epileptologist will explain the study design and set the expectations. You know, there's this many visits. You're going to be taking the medication at this time. If this is a duration of it, this is how long a visit will be. And then the reason for the informed consent is because we really want our patients to understand the risks and potential benefits and have a physician available so they can answer any medical questions. Most commonly, we get questions of, oh, what are the common side effects? So during the informed consent process, we go through all of that. And then the second pillar for clinical research is data quality and integrity. So what that means is the processes that we're doing here in Hawaii are the same exact processes they're doing in Florida, in Texas, in Alaska, in California. Because the FDA, they want to make sure that the data is clean. So that means, for example, if a patient tells me that, hey, I had 2 seizures in this last month, it's our job to make sure to confirm, okay, was it 2 seizures? Asking the caregiver, do you agree that it was 2 seizures? Because the FDA really wants to make sure that the data is accurate, and that way when it goes to approval, it's being approved because the data was correct. And one of the common questions I get are, well, what are the potential pros of research? And, Catherine, talk to us about the cons for research. The pros is that our patients have access to cutting edge and potentially effective medication. Usually by the time that patients come through for research, they've already tried over the counter, or they've already tried prescription, what's already on the market, and they've already tried, they don't have seizure freedom. So now with research, we're seeing different pathways and different ways to attack and address the root cause for epilepsy. As Naomi mentioned earlier, there is no cure for epilepsy yet, but so researchers were working really hard to find a cure and to find ways to maintain and increase quality of life. So that is one pro that you may have, is just access to the newest technology and therapies available, and more importantly, it's free. So it's completely free for the patient, and we're actually able to fly over the patients from neighbor islands, and just to provide that access to the care. It's very different than health insurance. We don't even ask for health insurance because all the care is free. Additionally, you do get close monitoring of your health and increased access to healthcare. Like I mentioned before, all the coordinators, we carry our cell phone right next to us. And that way our patients are able to call in case there is an adverse event, because we want to be able to react quickly and be proactive and bring the patients in to see the doctors as soon as possible. So that is definitely one pro for research, is that you do work a little bit closer to your healthcare professionals, and you definitely build a relationship with the clinical team. Now for cons, of course, there is the potential for placebo. And what that means is, because the FDA looks at all the data, we need to compare the medication to the placebo. Now placebo means there is no active ingredient, meaning it's a sugar pill, because we want to see, compared to nothing, does the therapy work? I personally think this is one of the biggest cons for research, because there is a chance that you may not be receiving placebo. However, what we always like to tell our patients is, if it was up to us, of course, all the Hawaii patients would get the medication. However, because the FDA requires a placebo, there is a chance that you may or may not get the active ingredient. However, all the research that we do will help the future generations for folks living with epilepsy. One of the things that we always do at the end of the visit, we always say, thank you for your contribution to science. Thank you for allowing us to be part of the journey and being part of the solution for epileptic patients in the future. And then, of course, another con that could be for research is the drug may not work. There could be a lack of efficacy, or it doesn't work the way that researchers thought it would. And then another con, the third con, is going to be the time commitment and sometimes inflexible study schedule. So for instance, we have one of our trials right now. In the beginning, we ask the patients to come in every 2 weeks, only because they're titrating their medications up, and we have to check for adverse events, and we take blood work to make sure the liver is going well. But if you work a full-time job, it's hard to come in every 2 weeks, and it's hard to have that type of leave, especially if you have a caregiver who has to take time off as well. So we do understand that that's a potential con, the amount of time that is required for it, and sometimes the inflexible study schedule, we're unable to reschedule because we have to see patients within a certain time frame. And then finally, the last con is there may be unknown side effects. Because we are testing this in clinical trials, one of the things we're looking for is the drug safe? And the flip side is, what are the side effects if there are? Okay, any questions so far? Okie dokie, I'll go ahead. And I wanted to take a few moments just to do a refresher for focal onset epilepsy. because I'm going to be talking about one of our trials for focal onset epilepsy in a little bit. So for focal onset epilepsy, unlike generalized epilepsy, which starts in both sides of the brain at the same time, focal onset epilepsy starts only on one side of the brain, resulting in recurring seizures. So focal onset seizures can become generalized, meaning it can start in one part of the brain and then becoming generalized on both parts of the brain. So we have seen that. And I want to go through the two main focal seizures. So the first type is focal aware seizures, where you are aware that the seizure is happening and you have a memory of it. And then the second time is focal impaired, meaning you black out and at the end you would wake up and say you're on the ground. You don't remember what happened. And usually a caregiver will say, oh, you had a seizure. So those are the two main types of focal seizures. Both types of focal onset epilepsy can be categorized as either motor or non-motor. And what I mean by motor is repeated movements, jerking, or loss of muscle tone. And non-motor is no muscular activity, rather alterations or changes in thinking, deja vu, or sensations or emotions. So I've had patients tell me they see red and they just see that. And so those are types examples. So now going into one of our research trials, which is the reason why we're here, is because for epilepsy, this is currently a recruiting trial and it's called our Realize trial. The medication is so new, it doesn't even have a name yet. It's called CVL-865 and it's taken twice a day, so once in the morning and once in the evening. The purpose of this trial is to see if the medication is effective in decreasing the number of focal onset seizures without causing too many side effects. This is a new class of anti-epileptic medication in that it's a positive allosteric modulator of specialized GABA sites, which is a really fancy way of saying it works on different pathways in the brain. Key inclusion criteria that we're looking for is folks who are 18 to 75 years old and diagnosed with focal onset seizures for the last 2 years and have failed 2 other AEDs. And what that means is still having recurring seizures, even with taking an anti-epileptic medication. And then for this trial, we actually have, I want to say, we've screened about 15 folks here in Hawaii locally, including the neighbor islands. So we've had some folks fly in from Big Island as well as Maui, I believe. And then currently folks who are in the trial, we have 6 who are currently in the trial. And the reason why there's only 6 that are in the trial is because in order to qualify for the trial, there's a certain parameters and strict inclusion exclusion criteria. So part of the screening visit is that we'll bring you folks into the clinic and then we'll do blood work, we'll take shishi, we'll check heart, and every step there's a part to see if you would qualify for the trial. And that's why we don't have all 15 folks in the trial, because some of them weren't included based on medications they were taking, based on the blood work, based on a drug screening test, things like that. So there are various ways to qualify and not qualify for the trial. And then the second trial I want to talk to you folks is this device right here. So this is called Staccato alprazolam. And we right now have an adult and adolescent trial for Staccato alprazolam. Adolescent, that the FDA defines as 12 years old to 17 years old. And what's really exciting is we typically are an adult-only comprehensive epilepsy monitoring center. However, this is our first trial where we are offering it to adolescents, so 12 to 17 years old. And I'm really pleased to announce that our local patient here in Hawaii, we were the first patient in the world to try and test out this device. So I'm very pleased with Hawaii for being so cutting edge and the pioneers really in epilepsy innovation. But right now we do have the trial that's recruiting for patients with epilepsy, so any type of epilepsy. And then the device looks like this. It's about probably smaller than my palm, and it's being hailed as the EpiPen for seizures. For example, the thought behind the design is if a mother sees their child having an aura, or if the child tells their mom, you know, I feel a seizure coming, then the mom can pull this out of her purse. You pull a tab on the bottom, and then it activates the medication. There's a green light that goes, and then the patient will put their mouth over and then inhale, hold in the medication inhalation for about 3 seconds, and that will abort the seizure. We have seen it in our clinic. We had about 7 folks go through the phase 2 trial, and now we're moving on to the phase 3 trial. So we're going into the next step. We're hoping that in the next few years, this device will be approved on the market. Right now, the closest would be Nasolam or Valtoco, which is inhalation through the nose. So we're getting there. We're working on it. But I wanted to go through and remind you folks about the clinical research general points, is that the participation is entirely voluntary. We always tell our patients, you have the right to stop participation. There's no problem. I won't be mad at you. Dr. Liao, Dr. Vimla won't be mad at you. It's okay. And that the second point is that there's no cost to you to participate in research studies. In fact, you get a little bit of a stipend just for your time, because we do understand people take off of work, and that can be very difficult. And then the third point is your participation may help in advancing medical options for future generations. So think of your kids, your grandkids, and whatnot. And then we are located at St. Francis in Honolulu. But if anyone wants to contact us, I'm going to leave this slide up with our phone number. It's 564-6141, as well as our email. We're pretty fast with email, so go ahead and you can either call or you can email us. But do we have any questions?
Any questions, anyone? I'm going to ask one.
Okay.
So you said there's a stipend. What
Yes.
is a typical stipend amount?
Yeah, sure. Great question. So typically the stipend is, it can be about $100 or $75 to $100 each time. And then typically a research visit will range about 1.5 hours to 2 hours.
And did you mention how long how long a participant would participate?
Yeah, sure. So for the Realize trial, that the participation is about 6 months long, but then there's an open label, so that's 1 year long. So total would be about 1.5 years.
Okay.
Great question.
Are there any new research opportunities in the pipeline that we may want to consider or think about?
Sure. So definitely, I know in Q1 of next year, we do have a few that we're looking at that I'm unable to say at this moment, but definitely, I just want to say thank you to the Epilepsy Foundation for always inviting us to speak about the new therapies here in Hawaii. I really think that community education is key, and we need to let the community know what there is and what options you all have. So definitely, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me or Naomi. She knows how to get in contact with me, but I'm pretty reachable.
Yes, you are. Anybody?
Yeah, don't be shy. I don't bite.
Yeah, this recording will be available on our YouTube channel probably by next week or the following week as a resource. So you can go back and watch it again if you had any questions or if you thought you missed something. It is available, and you can just go and watch it as many times as you want. It's shareable, so you can share it with whoever you think may need this information. We have
Make
a
sure
few
to
more.
click like and subscribe.
Yes.
Share with your friends.
Like and subscribe. Definitely, you can follow us on social media, and you can see Catherine did a social media live went Instagram live a few weeks ago, and that was fun. So that is also on our Instagram channel at Epilepsy Hawaii. That is also shareable. So you like it and add it to your story and whatnot, or repost it and tag us.
Yeah, exactly.
So I know you had your slide up with your contact information. You
Yeah.
want to put it in the chat?
Yeah, of course. Here, I'll go ahead and put it off. Catherine Mitchell.
And then maybe, Catherine, if you wouldn't mind sharing a little bit more about what are the other things that HPN does, Hawaii Pacific
Yeah.
Neuroscience?
Oh, great question. So we are a neurology clinic, meaning that anything neuro we can do. We have a team of multidisciplinary physicians. So that means we have a physiatrist who does pain. That means when our neurologist says that, oh, you have something wrong with your nerves, then we have an in-house physiatrist who can say, okay, how can we help this problem? So our model is definitely working together and having the different disciplinaries work towards the patient-based model. So instead of sending the patient around back and forth, we just have a one-stop shop. That way the patient can be taken care of by the team of specialists around. And that's really the vision and drive for Hawaii Pacific Neuroscience. We also have a sleep center. So with sleep apnea, insomnia, anything like that. So our neurologist works closely with our sleep physician as well. In terms of our epilepsy monitoring units, we have 4 overnight beds where we have video EEG recordings, meaning for folks who are newly diagnosed, they can stay here for 3 nights and 4 days. And then the room is actually the same size as the room I'm in right now, but they have a twin size bed, actually twin extra long bed. They have a twin extra long bed. They have Netflix, Amazon, and we have 24-hour monitoring, meaning that if a seizure happens in the middle of the night, our techs are trained and they're there and they can document and then have that VEG clip. That way it helps with diagnoses as well as seeing, progression or if therapy is benefiting. And then we have a migraine specialist. So Dr. Vimala Vajala, our epileptologist, she is also our migraine and pain specialist physician. So she does all things migraines as well. She does Botox injections, Emgality, but that's a separate talk. Dr. Vimala, she is a specialist for women with epilepsy. So if you have any questions about, for example, like I think they're called catamenial seizures. Catamenial seizures. Dr. Vimla is really the expert for that, but she is in charge of our migraines as well. And then, yeah, so anything neuro, we've got it.
And you mentioned St. Francis, you have other campuses as well, or one other campus?
We do. So our main hub is St. Francis in Honolulu, and our second is in Waikele. So it's in the Waikele Outlet Centers area, past Starbucks and Jamba Juice. But we're looking to keep moving west. But right now we do have our Waikele location as well as our St. Francis location. And we're just thrilled to be here. So HPN has been around for going on 11 years, I believe. Yeah, this was our 11th birthday in September. So we have been here for over a decade. We started in Kailua, but then now we're working our way west.
And what about the neighbor islands?
Great question. So we do service our neighbor islands during the pandemic because all the flights were shut down and there was the lockdown that happened. Our neurologist actually flew over to the Big Island because, as we know, epilepsy just doesn't stop when there's a pandemic. So definitely our neurologist said, okay, where's the need? If our patients can't get to us, we will go to them. So I think in the height of 2020, we were flying over once a week just to service our patients there. But now that the flights have reopened up, we're home based back on Oahu, but we do see I'd say 25% of our patients do fly from neighbor islands, from Maui, Kauai, we have some from Molokai, and then Big Island. So we definitely are a one-stop shop for that, and which makes us very good travel coordinators for the day of. We're very good at working with HMSA.
So that would be my next question. What insurances? Do you take everything?
Yeah, so we take all insurances in Hawaii. Um, and the reason for that is because Dr. Liao saw that there was many specialists in Hawaii who weren't taking all the insurances. And Dr. HPN is a Christian-based organization. Dr. Liao wanted to make sure that we were open to all patients, regardless of their ability to pay. So we do take all Hawaii insurances, and we have an amazing prior authorization department to make sure the approvals go through. Great question.
Any other questions, anyone?
You're doing awesome, Naomi.
Okay, telehealth. You do telehealth? I mean, I obviously you do telehealth, but is that
Yeah,
something that you're going to continue to practice
we
beyond the
are.
pandemic?
Yeah, so actually, there's an emergency order proclamation that healthcare providers get with all the insurance companies. So far, it has been extended. So I believe our next extension is to January 2022. So whether or not the telehealth gets extended, personally, I think it will, but it's dependent on the red tape. Yeah, but I think once you have the genie out of the box, you can't put her back in the bottle.
Right? I know you can't put Zoom back in the bottle.
Yeah, definitely there are things that our neurologists can't replicate on Zoom or through telehealth. However, for the maintenance, especially for epilepsy, like the maintenance visits, asking how many seizures have you had and things like that, those can be done. But of course, with the neuro exam and with that has to be face to face. So there's pros and cons to it.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
All right. Well, if there's not going to be any other questions, I'm going to